So this Sunday we're going to be having a chat about 7 p.m. Eastern, 5 Mountain Time, I guess 4 Pacific. But we're going to be talking to Jose Nino, who is basically going to be discussing the case against intervention in Venezuela from a more libertarian perspective. And I think it is refreshing sometimes to see people that can see that arguing against a certain war does not necessarily put you into the corner of the regime that you consider to be your enemy. The fact is, if you were against the Iraq war, you were not for Saddam Hussein necessarily. Obviously, there probably were a few people that were sympathetic to Saddam. If you were against intervention in Bosnia or in Kosovo, and there weren't that many like that, you weren't necessarily on the side of Slobodan Milosevic. But the fact is that we're having a real issue today of finding people who can tell the truth, not because it's comfortable, but because precisely it's uncomfortable. And part of that is because of the censorship that we did discuss yesterday in my previous video. And part of it is because people really do think that they can only argue a case when it's based on their personal interest and their aspirations for what will happen. And I don't know what the solution to that is, because it really involves people trying to realize that if they're not honest to the world, eventually they won't be able to be honest to themselves. So yeah, we're probably going to be hosting it, not necessarily, I think I'll live stream it, but also Forgotten Millennials has chosen, I asked him if he would host it, so we will probably do it on his channel. I think he has a better graphic interface. In any case, a couple real quick announcements on the Venezuela front. I know that some of you might be tired of hearing about it, but I think it is important. We have to be vigilant as to where our country is committing troops. Okay, the fact is that there could, in the very near future, be, young people from our country, young people and, active duty military people going to Venezuela, representing our country. And unfortunately, that doesn't usually turn out very well when we're talking about a war situation. So Senator Scott from Florida, Rick Scott, he was recently elected, and he claims, and I haven't seen any corroboration for it, so this is just the words of a sitting senator in the U.S. Senate. He says he's glad Putin agrees with POTUS's goal of a peaceful resolution and will remove his troops and assets from Venezuela. I look forward to it happening this weekend. Russia is propping up Maduro and supporting his genocide. If Putin wants a peaceful resolution, Russia will get out now. Now, I don't think that that's the best way to publicize what you're talking about. Thanking a country while simultaneously accusing them of something. I think that was a bad way to go about it. I think that it's not. If Russia was to put troops in Venezuela in order to sustain a government that's ruined Venezuela, it's made Venezuela basically a non-functioning country. I think it's wrong. I think that, obviously, I think Putin does bear responsibility for it. I can't oppose American intervention while simultaneously blessing intervention by another country that hurts a third country. Okay? It's a problem. Okay? But if you're trying to get them to withdraw their troops in order to facilitate the situation being resolved, this isn't the way to do it. And the truth is that if we really think about it, Russia could be the country that would be able to do the most good over there by having Maduro removed, to put it lightly, and putting somebody who would actually run the country more effectively, and that would benefit everybody involved. Is it proper that Russia has undue influence in Venezuela? I think you should probably object to that. Is it proper, however, that the United States has undue influence over other countries? We have our intelligence services, our troops deeply ensconced in certain countries around the world. For many years, for example, we basically dominated the Philippines with our naval and air bases. That's the one I usually cite as an example, but it's not the only one. So, yeah, I think that we should encourage Russia to have a role in Venezuela that would help the Venezuelans. It isn't about helping us get the American goals achieved. It's about having Venezuelans represented by a competent leader. And unfortunately, Maduro, as long as Russia is keeping him in power, Maduro will continue to ruin the country and more people will flee Venezuela. And I don't think that you'll see very much movement in terms of solving any of the infrastructural issues, any of the issues of hunger and humanitarian problems. There was a debate called in Washington by Todd Young, I think he's a senator from Indiana, and he's talking about holding a hearing on possible military intervention in Venezuela. But listen, there's two ways to go about it. It could be that this hearing would put the brakes on any military intervention, and that would be, in my mind, good, and it would actually be a good look for the United States Senate. It also could be that it could validate the point of view of going into Venezuela, which is really it's something scary. I've been working on for a while this project concerning the broader history of military intervention in Venezuela. And the fact is that we're talking about some real issues that people don't take into account when you go into a country and basically assert your authority over them. It's something that people don't feel because you're not in that country. It's basically out of sight, out of mind. That's what happened in Iraq, but it's also what happened in Haiti for a couple years. It happened in Haiti also for a longer period early in the 20th century. And it's also happened several times in countries like Nicaragua and early in the 20th century, as well as Grenada, and of course, who can forget the Dominican Republic? Well, you probably did forget, it's very possible you don't remember that we occupied the Dominican Republic for a good part of the 1920s. So, yeah, I'm against intervention. I think it's a tough position to have when a lot of the other people that support it are, flame-breathing commies. And let's get to that. So today, there's a military helicopter that crashed near Caracas. We don't know what type of personnel was on it, apart from the fact that they're military, but what rank they are or whatever. It would seem that if you see more and more accidents happening there could be safety concerns. When, for example, a country doesn't have enough money to buy hardware and spare parts and, to pay their own soldiers in order to maintain their equipment, you do see more accidents, and that has happened in a number of countries that are basically, in that part of the world. You can also see that there are some people that don't understand the meaning of the word irony. So you have Rania Halek, who is, she's a journalist. She's a very far left, hardcore left journalist. And she said she just walked by the Venezuelan embassy. There are several dozen very loud, very aggressive pro-opposition activists. They've taken over the entire outside of the embassy and are taunting the anti-war activists, protecting the embassy inside and threatening them. The embassy protection collective people inside the embassy are running out of supplies. The right-wing oppositionists won't allow anything, even food or anyone inside. They have besieged the embassy and the cops are letting them. And then she says, isn't there a DSA in D.C.? Where are they? So the DSA, if you don't know, is the Democratic Socialists of America. The police would never allow any other embassy to be surrounded like this. It's unprecedented. Imagine what the police would do if people behaved this way outside the Saudi or Israeli embassy. It's such a strange sight. The embassy protesters are blasting music. and the prevention activists are dancing while they besiege them from outside the Venezuelan embassy. So you can see here there's all these placards. They're clear. This you can clearly see this is anti-Maduro. And for a little context, the Venezuelan embassy defected basically to the U.S. or sorry, yeah, I mean if you want to look at it that way, to the U.S. But no, they decided that they would be loyal to the Guaido government and not to Maduro. And then Code Pink and a bunch of other far left activists decided that they're going to occupy the embassy. So they basically invaded the embassy and took it over. And now you have Venezuelan opposition activists who are surrounding the embassy. So now she's expecting the DC police to clean up the mess that they created, because they apparently these Americans want to complain about the Venezuelan diplomats that were inside that defected to the other government that they don't like. And now they want our police, or the DC police, I'm not from DC, to clean it up. That's truly irony. So here's a little. Okay, and you have them posting all this stuff. It says Code Pink equals Savior Complex. It says last week the Venezuelan embassy was covered in anti-war slogans. Now it's covered in right-wing opposition signs demanding U.S. intervention and regime change, and calling Code Pink fascist and pro-genocide. My personal fave is the sign demanding Iran get out of Venezuela. LOL what? Well, let me see if we can even see that. I think this is promoting a certain resolution at the UN. And it says, hands off my embassy, Code Pink invaders. Russia, Cuba, China, Iran, hands off Venezuela. So, and this one says, stop crimes against humanity, arrest Maduro. But in the photo, that's not Maduro, that is Beo. I think his name is. So, yeah, this is kind of a pretty crazy situation. It says, it's pretty shocking that the media coverage of this embassy siege has so far neglected to highlight the racism and violence and homophobia being expressed by the right-wing opposition activists who are here demanding Trump launch a war against Venezuela. Well, you know, I think when a country is basically falling apart, nobody has to give it an F about homophobia. Okay? That's not really germane to the conversation. And then she complains, now that the sun has gone down, the pro-war activists are shining strobe lights at the Venezuela embassy protectors, and of course they continue to blast their horns. Left-wing activists would never be allowed to do this in a residential neighborhood without being arrested. Well, what about what was the thing that they did? They protested outside of Mike Pence's house. They did what was it, like the gay dance party or something? So you have these dueling demonstrations over there, and you have all these people who are, you know, left-wing supporters, and they're saying, I assume they have laws against noise after 10 p.m. in D.C. And then it says, yes, but nothing against flashing strobe lights. Technically, the police can tell them to be quiet during the day if the residents in the area file a noise complaint, but it seems the police are picking and choosing what laws to uphold. And then this person says, there must be a flood of complaints from the neighbors nonetheless. This is going to be a problem for the local police and governor. So this idiot doesn't know that there is no governor in D.C. D.C. is the District of Columbia. That's where the embassy is. So, you know, this is pure, you know, these are morons. Then this person says that the U.S. government does not cut the electricity and the water to the embassy. And then this person says, at least then it is clear that the U.S. government is doing it. If they are forced out by the mob, it will be much easier to spin this as a dispute between Venezuelans and protesters. So you see these people that They normally they don't care about laws when they're violating them. Remember, there was the DC what was it called, the J21 riots in DC during the inauguration of Trump. Many people claim that the rioters who were destroying limos and vandalizing shops at the time, they called them political prisoners when they were arrested and basically jailed for destroying people's property. So nobody ever said that, well, why aren't the police coming and arresting those people? You even have somebody here saying, how is this not some kind of violation? I thought I saw a posted sign in a video about noise regulations. This is childish, stupid, and looks very CIA. So why are you caring about noise violations? You had people go to Tucker Carlson's house only a few months ago and say, Tucker Carlson, we will fight. We know where you sleep at night. So it was a pretty ridiculous swing from saying that you're going to go to a person's house when he's not there, threaten his family, try to bash his door down, okay, and then now you're complaining about noise. It says probably most of them are paid pro-opposition, always follow the money. And then it says, well, where's my money and the people that went with me at then? I've been robbed. So this is a protester, and it says the leader of the coup d'etat is hella U.S. backed. The violent Venezuela far right has gotten hundreds of millions from the USA. So what's so ironic, and this is what we're going to discuss tomorrow, part of the time with Jose, is that the Venezuelan opposition isn't right wing at all. It's not far right. It's not center right. It's not right wing at all. Those people are democratic socialists, essentially. Much of the Venezuelan government was originally democratic socialist, and yet they've consistently started to shift further and further on the spectrum towards a more collectivist and more authoritarian side, where today you're seeing them basically creating these groups like the Colectivos, who are a parallel military organization and things like that. When you have groups that are loyal to a political movement that are armed, that's not democratic socialism even, or else democratic socialism doesn't have any difference from authoritarian socialism, which should give you some pause. I had to add this after looking into Rania Khalek. So the fact is that this is one of the problems of believing anything that comes out of the non-interventionist left. Okay? Now, I can only take myself as an example. I don't belong to any organization. And I would be, ideologically somewhat on the right, but I don't belong to any organization. I don't really go to protests at all. I think protesting has been ineffective. But she's getting pretty pretty touchy here. This was on April 30th when there were protesters outside the embassy. And she basically got really pissed off when somebody gave her a little piece of her mind.
I'm a fucking bitch? Why am I a fucking bitch?
Because you're being paid to be here.
You don't even know who I am, dude. You don't even know who I am.
Yes, I know who you are.
Who am I? What's my name?
You're somebody who's supporting a dictator who's killing people. That's who you are.
So you're gonna go around and say fuck you, bitch?
Yeah, I'm gonna say fuck you to everyone who supports a communist that kills people.
Okay. You're gonna really have a good time getting people on your side talking like that.
So she's giving advice to people about how to behave at a protest. And a lot of people are they're getting really bent out of shape about it. Well, one person is saying entitlement writ large. Well, you don't know who that guy is, okay? He was a little better dressed. This person's also, complaining a lot and saying the worst, come over here and try to make Americans do their dirty work. I was in college and got an earful from a Venezuelan about Chavez and about how Bush is great, blah, blah, blah. A few weeks later, asked him what his family does. Oil biz. Predictable, they ain't huddled masses. Well, I hope you guys realize that's the only thing that Venezuela has in its economy now, you idiot. What else would his family be doing? And then this woman is replying, saying Chavez literally threw that person's family out of PDVSA for not agreeing with him. Didn't give them any sort of benefits and blacklisted them, forcing them to leave the country. This happened to hundreds of people back in 2003. And then the same person says, interesting, they must have been wealthy even after being thrown out. His tuition had to have been $40,000 a year. He mentioned he attended a military academy here that costed even more than that. I probably had about $200 in my checking account, and he's trying to guilt me. Well, okay, so the whole point of being a leftist, I guess, is to, grieve over your own financial inequality with somebody else. Even the point here is that you work for a company and they're, in theory, you should be able to protest about certain policies in your company. This is what people on the left always do, by the way. People on the left always say you should change the corporate culture in your company if you don't agree with it, telling you to complain about things like sexism and racism and whatever. Well, these people literally got fired for doing just that back in the early 2000s. So this person replies, and he says, no, actually, my family was thrown out of our own house. Dad, mom, me, and 2 brothers when my dad was fired from PDVSA. And after that, we lived in a trailer for 1 whole year until my dad got another job. But okay, I don't know if this is the same person that was talking about it. And then it says, so this person says, he distinguishes it, says world media called it a general strike following the opposition lead, but it was a lockout by managers who prevented the workforce from working, not a strike. So that you have a lot of people calling them gusanos. Gusanos is a derogatory term for the Venezuelan or Cuban anti-socialists. And, there's a few people who are commenting against her saying, oh, I mean, he isn't wrong. Then this person, ironically, while he has, or she, has 2 Congolese flags in his profile, and also Palestinian flags all over his profile description, is calling these people dual citizens. So I want you to realize that this woman, Rania Khalek, is making this long commentary about, people shouldn't behave like that to me as a journalist. Well, in 2016, you have to remember, Rania Khalek, where does she come from? She comes from a website called Electronic Intifada. Electronic Intifada claims to be journalism, but it is basically activism. It is a pro-Palestine website. And as a person working for Electronic Intifada, she went with Max Blumenthal, another activist, to an IDF spokesperson's unit speech over at the museum in Washington, D.C., and got kicked out after she after she basically started shouting these pro-Palestine slogans such as "Free, Free Palestine." So if you're an activist and you want to pretend you're a journalist, and then you see activists who are against you yelling abuse at you, you should remember that that erodes your standing as a journalist. If you're a journalist and you take a certain stance and you also engage in activism towards that stance, and then you try to put on this air that, oh, but I'm actually a journalist. No, people can see through that and they can call you out on it. And you don't have this entitlement to any courtesy just by virtue of the press pass that you have. So I know that this has been a little long, but I want you guys to check out the stream tomorrow. It probably will be around 7 p.m. Eastern and 4 Pacific. And also, as always, please like, share, subscribe. Also, subscribe to me on BitChute and on Minds.com. Those are both at Chef Leopard. And also on Gab.com at Starscream85. And I'll talk to you next time. Have a great night.